Hey everyone, welcome to Talking Landscape Photography number 51. Awesome to have you all with us. I'm sorry we had a bit of a break for a couple of weeks. I think it was probably a well-earned rest. I'm sure that you appreciated having a bit of downtime, Nick, from the show, but it's always a pleasure to be back. And what have you been up to lately, Nick?
No, it was nice to have a week off, but it was good. I think you did earn it, although I'm the most absent of all of us. But I guess now that COVID's sort of okay, probably hard to say this with the Melbourne guys in lockdown again, but for us and particularly you and Paul, it probably allows for a bit more travel and whatnot, which can get in the way of the show. So that's what the last couple of weeks have been about, as well as having a rest. And Paul's actually off this week, off in remote Western Australia somewhere. Lucky him. He's managed to avoid all the lockdown bits and pieces and skip it. And you've been away to Central Australia and on a road trip. And I've just been back at work doing back at work things, basically.
Oh, well.
No real photography, but you've done a fair bit the last couple of weeks. So
Yeah, I've been on a road trip around Tasmania on the west coast and started off in Cradle, went up to Stanley, Arthur River, down to Corinna for a couple of nights, then to Strawn, stayed at Pump House Point, which was quite nice, and then back to Hobart. And then I had to fly directly I had one night back in Hobart, and I think I got in at 4 p.m. and left at 6 a.m. the next morning. So that was pretty rough. And then ran a workshop in Uluru for 5 days, which was absolutely astounding. So today's actually the first day I've had to myself since I think it was May 23rd. So there you go, probably a day or so after the last show. So it's been pretty hectic, but it's been good. So and I'm looking forward to this show. I'm looking forward to getting a few edits done, because normally it takes me a lot to get my own shots edited. So this is just like a cover story for me to get some edits done. So I hope you guys all learned something tonight. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. That includes you too, Nick, and vice versa. I'm certainly be asking you questions as we go. And also to our friends on YouTube as well as on Zoom. So make sure it goes, any questions go in. What we're going to do is I'm going to kick it off, and I'll show you my 5 selections of raw files to edit. And I'm going to then ask everyone to vote. The Zoom guys, that actually have a polling thing that will come up that you can choose the image to vote for. And then anyone on YouTube, you're welcome to add a number in the comments as well. And then I'll get stuck into the edit on that one. And then we'll do the same process for Nick. And then in the second round, I'll actually choose one of Nick's images, and Nick will choose one of my images, and there'll actually be an expanded selection. So there'll be I think I've got 14 images or something like that to choose from. We just didn't want to have 14 choices for the whole lot of the viewers, because that could have got a bit messy. So, and I think Nick, you'd have about 10 or so. So
now I've got 10. Yep.
Very looking forward to seeing what you've got there too. Coincidentally, all of my images were taken this year or very late last year. So a lot of very fresh stuff that folks may not have seen before, which I'm actually excited to get stuck into. What we'll also try and do is we'll actually go into the original folder where the photo was taken and just show you some of the photos that were taken around that point. And we may even choose to edit a slightly different image, or do use that as part of a panorama, exposure blend, and that sort of thing. So it's really getting into the nitty gritty. You might see some stuff under the hood that we do. So go easy if something doesn't work right, but we'll see how we go. So I guess what I'll do is I'll start off by sharing my screen, and I'm going to be obviously starting off in Lightroom. So hopefully all you guys can see that. No worries. So these are the 5 selections I've got. I'll just hide that. And so if I'm just going to launch the poll on Zoom, and if the guys on YouTube would like to enter a number of which image you'd like me to edit up tonight, then feel free to go ahead now. I'll give you about another 15 or so seconds to have a bit of a think about it.
Oh, that's all right. Give them a bit of time. Is it easy enough to you just click on it, do you, or what?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, we've already got 4 votes in on Zoom already. So And basically, yeah, the first image is taken around the Bay of Fires area. The second image is taken around the Huon area, the channel south of Hobart. The third image was taken in Mount Field National Park. The fourth image is taken in Southwest National Park. And the final image is taken at Freycinet National Park, which is pretty awesome little spot there. So, all right, watching all the votes come in. And I think we'll probably look at calling it there. I think most of the Zoom votes have been cast. So we've got 50% have actually voted for number 1 on Zoom, and we've got a 2 and a 3 on YouTube. So I think that would mean that we're going to be going with image number 1. So nice. Thanks very much for everyone voting in there. And that's how we're going to play it. So I don't know if you can see this screen coming up now, but that's the poll results from Zoom. So let's get stuck into it. So this is a shot. This is actually me up the top here, standing sort of in an ominous pose, I suppose. I've actually put a light behind me just to light up my hands and that kind of thing. It was taken with an A7 III, which I include in my file name. My file name's actually the date, month, year, month, day. And then this is actually 0503 in the morning and 17 seconds. So I know exactly when this image was taken just from the file name. And then this is the name that comes straight from camera. So I've got access to all of that information. You can see it was taken with my favorite landscape lens, the 12 to 24 GM. For 20 seconds at f2.8 6400, and 20 seconds turned out to be too long, so there is a bit of star trailing in the image, which is a bit annoying. I should have calculated my NPF factor a little bit better, but that's some of the technical details behind that. So I'll just hide all of this stuff now. I think I can go Control-Shift-F just to go into full screen mode and show a bit more information. So we'll go into the develop module. Hide that one there. Now, if I go into, I think I can just go to folder in library. We'll just see some of the shots around this. You can see some of these have had what I've already sort of edited to, but I'm going to do a fresh edit. I've got a few here where I was shining out torches and trying a few different things. I decided to not use an image where I was shining a torch because it's a little bit cliche, but it was still a lot of fun. This one actually shows a bit more of what the foreground was actually like. So if I wanted to, I could try and blend some of this into the frame. I actually don't think that, I think that'd be too distracting if I worked with some of that. So I don't think I'll worry about that. Here's another one that's got the face of it lit up a little bit more. If I wanted to go with that, I think I like the dark look, to be honest. So I'll go ahead with not adjusting too much. I think this was the image here. Yeah, here it is. So the other thing you might notice from all of these is this was earlier on this is actually in a morning shoot. So the skies are quite a bit darker here. And as the moon was rising, I thought actually the sun was rising, the sky started to really brighten up. And that's why we've got a much more blue sky with not as much detail or color in the Milky Way, which probably isn't a bad thing. Will give it a little bit more interest value, I think, than the standard astro shots, and also makes this quite a bit more backlit, which is quite nice. In terms of the starting point, I always start off looking at the different color modes. For astro, I've recently switched from using the Adobe color profiles, and I'm now using the camera ones. I've found the camera ones have much more accurate color, and I think the Adobe ones tend to wipe out a lot of the color and make it a lot desaturated. So if I go to Adobe color here, the blues, sometimes they look all right. I just feel like the result that I get with the camera profiles are a lot better. So I never used to do that. I used to always use the Adobe profiles, but the camera ones are for me. I think the camera light can also work quite well in Astro, so I might leave it on camera light as well. Just sort of helps to open up the shadows a little bit as well. I've got a white balance here set. I must have had it shot at 3950. Sometimes I'll actually just check and see what daylight looks like. I actually like that because we're coming into sunrise, we've actually, it is starting to be affected by the daylight. And so I think the daylight white balance has actually added in quite a bit of color through the Milky Way core, which we didn't have prior to that. It was very blue. So the daylight white balance here is actually probably going to help us in terms of getting a better color separation and that kind of thing. So I'll go with that. Now, one of my favorite techniques in editing astro shots is reducing the exposure while also reducing the contrast. No, I said that wrong. It's increase the exposure, reduce the contrast. And so you can see how that's really just opened up the image straight away. I generally don't reduce it too far, but automatically it's actually really opened up those shadows without having to touch the shadows or highlights, shadows or black sliders, which I think works really well. It does mean the sky looks a little bit more washed out, but we can address that later. I often sort of think of this whole area just as like contrast optimization. So that's what I'm basically doing now. Also got a really white patch here as well to deal with, whether or not that's too far gone. It's not in the histogram, but whether I want to recover that, I'll think about. I'll boost some more of the shadows here to get a little bit more detail in there. It's pretty good considering this is an ISO 6400 frame, how much color we're still getting coming out of here. I mean, I'm sure if I zoom in there, you'd see a fair bit of noise, but that's going to be expected with that sort of ISO value. So I'll just play around now with the highlights, see if I can get anything there going. And the shadows, or just touching that before. Whites, maybe bring that down a touch. Blacks, see what we go with there. We will also go into the tone curve. I don't generally tend to touch these too much. I'll have a look and see what they do, but generally don't tend to. I normally add these selectively rather than globally if I need to. So by that, I mean I'd add it via a radial filter or a grad filter rather than making it adjust the whole image. Same goes with vibrance to a certain degree. I could push in a little bit, but I wouldn't do much more than that. All right, so I actually really love this tone curve area. Some folks totally ignore it, but for me, I get quite a lot more out of an image using the tone curve. So I generally find the lights slider is kind of like the gold one. It will really help the skies and Milky details in the Milky Way really sing. Just playing around with these, just getting a nice balance. Doing this is opening up the shadows a little bit, and you can see the reflection of the Milky Way a little bit better now too. Moving and then move the midpoint around. That's going to change how the contrast is sort of applied and where the, I guess, the inflection point or where the, if the contrast is more in the lights or the shadows. I definitely prefer it more down here, but adding a little bit, where is it? I haven't really moved it very far at all, really. It's in about the same place. And that's probably it for the tone curve for the moment for me. Next step will be to, I don't normally use the HSL color mode, to be honest, unless there's a color or something going on that I just really don't like. So I'll leave that for the moment, actually. But it doesn't mean I don't use it at all, but very rarely. And same with color grading as well. I just normally like to go with the natural colors in the image. Detail, what do I do here? In terms of sharpening, you don't want to apply too much sharpening on the astro image because it's going to, sharpen the noise as well, but you can mask it. So if you hold down Alt and move the masking around, you can actually see where the sharpening is being applied, and you can see it's actually sharpening the stars, which I don't think is really necessary. So I'm probably going to just turn sharpening off for the moment, and doesn't mean I'm not going to sharpen the image, but I'll probably worry about that in Photoshop instead, which I'll quickly bring into. How am I going for time, Nick? Have I still got a few minutes left out of my 20? In terms of profile corrections, again, this is actually something I don't normally apply unless it's really necessary. In terms of this, I kind of like how it's corrected the distortion. It's sort of stretched the figure up the top a little bit more. So I will leave it there. Sometimes I don't let it apply the vignetting though, because I actually like the vignette. Although there's another way that I can apply a vignette myself. So maybe if I neutralize the vignette, then I can add the vignette that I'd like to add rather than use the vignette that the lens has decided, basically, or what the vignette that the lens has applied.
You're at 7 minutes, by the way. I was
All right,
I was
cool.
trying to tell you, and I was muted.
All right. So, and I don't touch transform unless it's for more of a client type job. But for my own edits, I don't really get into the whole stretching thing all that much. You could stretch this for sure and give it a lot more impact, but that's just not something that I do. Yeah, your mileage may vary on that. Of course, I'll use it for stuff like architectural work or other things where you need to get the verticals all sorted and that sort of thing. But yeah, I don't normally touch that otherwise. One thing I probably haven't done though, having said that, is just checked the horizon itself. So often I'll just roll this over the horizon just to see what's going on. Might be slightly off, but that's quite a bit there. It's hard to tell because there's, when you apply the angle, the distortion itself can adjust the actual angle. So it's if anyone has a better way of doing it, I'm all ears. But I think that's not a bad way of going about it. It's probably not a bad thing having that figure kind of leaning in a bit more that way anyway from that rotation. So I don't mind that. So I'll apply that. And then what we can do is effects. That's nothing that I need to worry about there. And calibration, I won't touch for the moment. Sometimes I do adjust the colors using the calibration, which I find has a bit of a more natural effect, but I'll leave that on this case. And then I'll just do a few adjustments using radial filters, which is my sort of favorite thing to do. In this case, I'm going to do a big one. This is me adding my vignette. So I'm going to invert that. So I'm only applying, actually I'll leave it uninverted. So I'm applying it to the outside. And then I'm going to reset that one and then pull the exposure down. And then what I do is I also pull a contrast down. So the idea with this is as you pull down the exposure, it sort of increases the contrast. So by pulling the contrast down as the exposure goes down, you darken the edges without actually increasing the contrast. And so it gives that darkening effect around the edges without, it looking as obvious. And then I can feather that out. Sometimes I actually see what the mask overlay actually looks like when I do that, just to see how big the feather is. In this case, I'll probably move that vignette so it's a bit more biased towards the subject, and maybe also include the Milky Way in that too. So that way it's really just darkening the parts that aren't the interest value. And then that's going to help to draw the eye into the kind of the good stuff, if you will. I mean, this shot also definitely lends itself to a more of a 4:5 crop, because you don't really need this part of the image at all, and maybe even top part of that. No, I don't normally do 4:5 crop now, but I do like to see what it might look if I was to upload it onto Instagram or something like that. And you can sort of see that would sit in pretty nicely around there as a 5:4, but I won't do that now. I think what I'll do now is actually just take it into Photoshop and do a few things in there. So let's bring that up now. Should be loading in the background, hopefully. Let's see what's going on. It's probably because I'm in full screen mode. Oh no, there we go. All right. So my Photoshop looks a little bit all over the place. I use the Tony Kuiper luminosity masking panel quite a lot, and so that I really love that, and I've been using it for many years. In this case, what I'm going to use it for is creating a zone mask that's going to select this bright area here. I'm just not happy about how that felt over bright for me, so I'm just going to then put that out onto, I should have selected, put it out onto a curves layer. So what this has done now is it's created a zone mask. So it selected that sort of luminosity value and put it out onto a mask that's applied, which will be adjusted by this curves layer. So if I pull this down here, you can see it's sort of really dimming down that area, but it's doing it in a pretty sort of natural way. It's not really doing it in a way where it's like super obvious. I can turn that layer off and on again later just to show, but I'll also group that and then put an inverted mask on that and then paint in exactly where I want it to be applied using a brush, white brush. So I can just sort of dab that in here and just sort of bring that highlighted area back. Otherwise it would apply it to some of these other areas here as well. So you can sort of see that sort of pulled back that brighter patch there. And I can sort of feather that off a little bit with the opacity. And also if I wanted to, I could also feather it here as well, just to soften the edges a bit more. So that's sort of just taken out that bright patch there. Then what I'd like to do a lot of contrast work using curves, and that brings a lot of detail out in the Milky Way. So to do that, you can apply sort of like a bit of an S curve, although it's not a massive S curve, but again, I'll group that and then invert the mask on the group, and then I can paint in some actual contrast into the Milky Way core. Just make sure I'm brush. So if I paint
in a group,
what?
Why do you do that in a group rather than just on the mask for the curves layer? You just invert the mask there. I'm just curious because
yeah, I mean, I probably could have done that. I don't know why I did it that way, to be honest. I probably just wasn't thinking, but
no, not at all. But it made sense with the
prior one, yeah.
Yeah, with the prior one.
I could have applied it to this, so I think I can just do that and then not worry about the group. If I ungroup that,
I'm not suggesting get rid of it. I just want to know what you're.
But no, that's a good point. I think it was just me not thinking. And then I will try and add a bit more of a vignette in there as well. I like to crunch the corners down in terms of, I don't like the corners being too bright, and I'm always trying to bring the viewer into the middle of the shot, but not doing it in a way where it's super obvious. Or hopefully it's not anyway. Other people might disagree and say, no, that's all your shots look like that. What are you talking about? But yeah, that's what I like to do anyway. I guess that's if anything, that's sort of like your style or what have you. So just like to dab over it a little bit just to get that going. And I mean, I do a lot of these sort of contrast adjustments basically, or using the curves. I just inverted that without looking what I was doing, and then just dabbing that information into that adjustment in. So in this case, I like it how it's increased or how it's made the bottom of this rock look. So I'll invert that and then apply that to in here. So this is a very, very soft brush. So, you know, it's not going to be noticeable where the transition or the edge of that is. I just got to make sure I haven't done too much on this patch here that I was trying to darken down before. And so you can sort of see that's just lifted that a little bit. Yeah, and so I'll just keep doing a few more of those. Just it's very iterative, I suppose, in terms of how I handle that. I also another thing I do is I do Alt Auto on the curves and just see if there's a better color balance that comes up. Sometimes see that I don't mind that too much. It's a bit purple, but it did bring a lot more. Maybe it's too purple. It's all trial and error for me when it comes to this stuff. Whatever works really. No, that looks, yeah, it's just how much I'm married to that blue really, because of the moon, the sun rising there. Yeah, it's definitely a pretty strong color there. So I mean, if I had more time as well, I would probably have done a stack because I did have more information in terms of other frames. And so I could stack those and actually get more detail out of here and also reduce the noise. But, you know, that's not doing a full stack. Might be an image that I do next time if Nick chooses a particular one. But if I was to do a stack, I would use Sequator to do that. So, so that's yeah, one of the things that I would do there. Just dabbing that in a bit. So, I mean, if I go to before and after now, you can sort of see I've pulled in a lot of that color. You can see a lot more of the Milky Way core now and the colors that were coming out of that. I've reduced this really bright spot here. I'm not super happy how I did that, having reviewed that again. So I might even pull that back even a little bit more on the edges, just so it's a bit softer. And that's using the black brush here. Yeah, so one thing I could look at doing is increasing the light that's coming behind me there, but that'll be a bit tricky. So I might not worry about that. I think the better option there would be to increase the contrast. So the figure looks pretty black already. So yeah, so that's, and then I would need to also, because I've made the core look so much stronger up top, I'll have to do that down the bottom there as well, just to get as much detail out so it doesn't look as weird. And so I'll just get a bit of contrast going and trying to make that look good there, and then invert that and then paint that in as well. So yeah, it's not really looking that great. So I might do another one, which is a bit brighter. Or I'll just adjust this to be a bit brighter. There we go. Just to make that look a little bit more obvious and balanced with the sky. And just adjust that curve to do that without it going too far. Something like that's not too bad. And what that's also doing is it's making the corners appear more dark because you're adding that light in above that. So, but I think I still will add a bit more darkness to those corners. So I'll do that and invert that. Hold down Alt and then Alt and then right click, and you can drag and increase the size of the brush. And so sometimes I'll do massive brushes that really softly add that adjustment. So there's just really no chance that it's going to be seen. And then, yeah, I'll just add a bit more around the edge there. So now if I'm doing like a before and after, you can see that that's starting to take a bit more shape there. That blue there is looking pretty full on. So I don't know what layer did that. Probably that one there. So I might back that off a bit on there.
So you're at 20 minutes now, right?
20 minutes. All right, well then, if that's the case, what I'll do, I said that we'd edit to a print standard, but this isn't print standard for me, but it would be probably reasonably good for Insta. So what I would do for that is I'll just duplicate it and do it as a merge layer, and then I'll crop it to 4:5. And then find the spot that I like. Something like that would be good. Maybe up a bit higher, actually. You've got to think about what it looks like as a square as well, because that's how it's seen as a thumbnail and in the grid. So if you change it to 1:1, you'll see what's going to fit in. And I want this top of this to fit in like that. So I should really put it down like this a bit more, and then put that to 5:4. So it's sort of cropped a bit of the top of the Milky Way off though. So I have to find a spot I'm happy with, maybe about there. All right, crop that. And then I use a preset in here for the web sharpening. So it automatically has the width set to 1080, 72 DPI, and then sRGB. And that's so I want it 1080 pixels on the horizontal. So I just click on that one, and then that's going to resize it. I haven't set a folder where to save it, so that message popped up. So yeah, that's pretty much the final image. It's looking pretty reasonably sharp there, and I probably, in 20 minutes definitely isn't long enough for a shot like that, but hopefully it gives you an idea. If we were to look at the original in here, it started off looking like, oh, that's not the original, is it? Anywho, where is it? I'll reset it. Yeah, it started off looking like that. So it's gone from that and then ended up as that. So yeah, it's still quite a reasonable change in that amount of time. So that's that quick live edit. Anyone got any questions about that at all? Feel free to add them in the comments. I haven't been looking at the comments as such. The name of the luminosity mask kit, Tony, is called Tony Kuiper luminosity mask. It's Kuiper's spelled Kuyper, and I think it's, what's his website, Nick? It was something like Good Exposure or something. It's got the word exposure in the name anyway. So yeah,
well, definitely. If you Google him, you'll get him. Yeah, he can hear me.
If you Google Tony Kuiper, then you'll definitely find it. So now I'm just going through some of the questions. Do I shoot with a custom color temperature at night? I shoot around 4,000 Kelvin. Let's see. I think, do you see the little rock in the pond as a distraction? Yeah, this one here, possibly. I don't normally think like that, though. I try not to. It possibly is. I would have had to have thought about that a little bit more. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it, but it probably is a distraction. I think that's all about it. So thanks very much. Oh, what program do you use to get rid of the noise? If I was to remove noise, I would create a merged layer and go to Filter, Topaz Labs, Denoise AI. Run that. It's actually pretty quick on my machine, so it doesn't churn away too long. You can actually just set it to auto here as well, and it'll sort of choose the best setting.
Screen, mate.
What was that? Oh, I'm not sharing screen. All right.
Screen again.
Here we go. So this is Topaz Denoise. So you can basically see, the before and after, what it's doing. It's not going to look like too much at the moment, but maybe if I go down in here, you can see a bit of difference. It's not really even showing that much there. I've got remove noise set to 4, so that's probably why. I'll just adjust these and put that back to, so it's actually not, if I go to auto, it's actually trying to not to remove too much noise. So I think it's pretty happy already at where the noise level is. So but that's what I would do, and then you can just click on apply, and then that's going to process it. It's sped up. The speed of it processing now is insanely improved. It used to take ages, but now it's like pretty much cooked in about 20 seconds. So that's pretty good. All right, Nick, over to you, I think. Otherwise, we'll run behind time.
That was really cool. Yeah, the noise thing doesn't show up that well on Zoom for the res, I don't think. But
yeah, well, it wasn't actually showing up much on my screen, so I think it just speaks to the amazing low light performance of the Sony cameras.
Of course it does. All right, well, I'll share screen, and hang on, I'll actually have to move Zoom over that side. And what can you see?
Yep, can see your screen there. So we've got your 5 selections to go there. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the poll on, I'll relaunch the polling and choose, oh, that's the wrong poll. Used to be able to choose the poll to run. Oh, there we go. Nick, launch the polling. So if you're on Zoom, you can choose now which image of Nick's to choose. And if you're on YouTube, feel free to also write in a number of the image, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there. Well, it's really interesting seeing the scores populate live. I think number 4's taking the lead at the moment. So we've got, we haven't got anything coming through on YouTube. So there is a bit of a delay with YouTube though. So we'll let it run a little bit longer. Anthony's going 4, Tony's going 5. So I think based on all of that, four's neck and neck with 2, 6 on 4 now. All right. Okay. Oh yeah, Anthony's voting on YouTube and on Zoom, so I don't know if we can count that, but all right. I think it's pretty clear though. I reckon we're Laura's gone 5, so I'm not quite sure what to do now. There's a lot of 5s there. 5. Oh, I reckon 5's just overtaken thanks to YouTube. So we're going number 5, Nick. A bit hard to hear there. Yeah, the audio's crackling up a bit. It's not the best timing, actually.
Is that better?
That's better. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, there's something wrong with the connection to the microphone. So if you have any problems hearing me, let me know and go from there. So we're going with number 5.
I'll definitely choose 5 too, by the way. That was brilliant, that one. So
right. Okay, cool.
Have you touched this image before, like in terms of how to crack yourself, or is this the first time people
Well,
have
you can
seen
see
it?
I've raised the exposure 0.18,
yeah.
but and the temperature isn't the same. So I've done something to it. I've looked at it. So I've just reset that to whatever it was shot in. Yeah, so this is up in the Blue Tier in the northeast of Tasmania, a very special piece of forest. And I was up there only recently, and this is from that recent shoot. And I was very lucky to get some mist in the background. It sort of came and went, yeah, this was a nice shot. And getting shots in the forest, as Luke will attest to, can be difficult at times. So I was pleased to get this one, but I haven't edited. I edited some others from this particular shoot, but not this one yet.
And they're all myrtles, are they, or the one in the middle?
Yep.
Yep.
They're all myrtles. Well, except for the smaller bits and pieces.
Looks like there's a sassafras maybe in the back there or something.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what that one is right at the back there.
Yeah.
But
you must have been happy with the amount of mist you had, like just enough to give that little bit of depth there. Yeah.
No, it's really nice. And one of the things that you have to be careful of when you're editing a shot like this is you don't lose the atmosphere. I actually found I was not with this, but I was at the in the Western Tiers, and I got a little bit of mist in the background for a particular shot, but I lost it when I turned the polarizer on. So it's amazing when you turn the polarizer how much you lose in atmosphere with the mist in the background.
That's interesting.
Yeah. If I think about it later, I'll show you. Does that mean that there's obviously an impact to how green that the moss and everything is going to be as well? And that's the thing. I use that Nissy landscape circular polarizer, and it makes the greens go pretty nuclear green. And you can see here I'm using the profile Adobe landscape, and what I do is I import everything with camera corrections turned on automatically and profile Adobe landscape. I just use that as a starting point. So when I bring the image up, it doesn't look too flat. It looks a bit more like I saw on the back of the screen. Sometimes I leave it in Adobe landscape. Sometimes I change it back or do something else. But as you can see from my list here, I haven't got the list of stuff that Luke's got, so I'll have to talk to him about how I actually get that up.
But, you get the four thumbnail sort of icons just to the right of where it says Adobe Landscape. Click on there. You've got all the other profiles.
I have seen that before.
If you go down to the camera setting, then you can actually, if you hover over one, you can actually click the star in the top right hand corner, and that'll add that to the list for you. So might be worth sussing those out, because I don't know, I used to always think that the camera profiles were crap, and then lately I've been switching to those because I like the way the colors come out more. I found the Adobe ones wash the colors out more than I'd like. So may vary.
Maybe I'll change it to something different than standard.
I could imagine this is one of those shots where the profile correction is pretty important, because you could lose that atmosphere really easy if you chose a certain profile. So you might want go with the more neutral one, or
Yeah.
Less contrasty. Yeah.
No, you've made it hard already. Made it hard
Sorry,
already.
mate. I should shut up, shouldn't I? It's your show.
No. This is good. I might put it into Adobe Color actually and just leave it at that for the time being.
Yeah.
Is that? That'll be fine. So the first thing I'm going to do here is make a crop. I usually do a crop to start with. So I'm just going to keep it as a 2x3 and just lose a little bit of this base here. A little bit at the top.
I mean, you don't go straight to 4:5?
Not from this image. This is not a 4:5 image.
Okay.
So that just obviously cuts out that bottom bit, which was a little bit much. I'm a bit like you, mate. I just tend to trial and error things. So I'm just going to drop the color temperature down a bit. So if you get it too warm in there, it looks a bit, looks a bit pus. So I might just drop it just a bit there. And of course, you've got your tint. You don't want too much magenta in the forest, but too much green and everything looks green. So maybe I'll just leave it on 0. I'll just put it there. I'll just bring up the shadows for a bit, but I will drop the black slightly down just to bring it that way a bit.
Andrew just asked, are you trying to recreate the mood that you saw at the time?
Well, pretty much. I mean, it's pretty much as it is. I mean, it's not the sort of image that you do, a butt ton to. You'd only want to do a little bit. If you bring the dehaze slider is interesting because you can actually sort of create mist and lose mist, and you've got to be really careful with it because if you put it in the wrong spot, it can make it look a little bit unnatural. I've seen lots of shots where people have clearly added dehaze in to make it all look like the whole thing was covered in mist like that, but it just doesn't look right unless you've got a very, very heavy mist, as you can see. Yeah, there would have been an awful lot more to edit in that other shot, but I'll.
Well, it's a good thing though if it's close to what you would go with anyway. I mean, you
yeah,
got a camera.
Yeah, look, I'm just trying to see where I would improve. Now, obviously, some people would go, you'll see up here, I've got blown highlights. You can see there in the red. That really doesn't worry me at all. I'll bring them down a bit. And, I mean, sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. Globally bring it down adds problems elsewhere. So if I was going to tackle those highlights a bit, I might use an adjustment brush, which I'll do for now just to bring it in, bring it down a bit the size. And I've obviously done something else here before.
Ah.
Well, let's get rid of whatever that is. I don't know what that was, but it didn't do anything. So yes, I obviously did try and edit this a bit and then left it. But so if I bring the highlights down a bit and if you paint them in, but you're starting to, if you can see there in the background, to me, it's not really doing a lot except losing mood. And I don't find it a problem. So I'm going to get rid of that brush and leave it as it is. This is a bit boring,
more
isn't
problematic
it, really?
if it wasn't misty, but if it's misty, you can sort of expect it to have that almost blown out character anyway.
Yeah, let's look at what happens when I bring the clarity slider in, which is something people might be tempted to do. Again, you start to lose that atmosphere. Everything gets a bit too crunchy. And yeah, if you're going to use it, you'd only use it a tiny bit. You can use
it. Negative clarity?
I'm just doing that now. And if you look up in the highlights area, it's sort of acting a bit like
it blooms them. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I might leave it at -2, just so it does something. But I'm not particularly.
When you say subtly, you're not kidding.
Yeah, so I might just go into something that I sometimes use. Where is it? I don't remember where the damn thing is. Oh, I think because is it still here? Just go and show people this. So I use the Nick color effects and all that sort of thing a bit. So we'll go into it.
You mentioned that it's just been updated or something as well.
Yeah, I've just downloaded the trial of the new one, which
Yeah.
I will pay for, but I haven't yet. So when it eventually pops up, which will take forever. So I'm still on the demo, but I've had this for many years. But this is the new version, which for color
They make you pay
effects.
again, do they?
Well, I never paid for it in the first place.
Oh, of course, because
I got it
Google one.
free with Google or whatever. But I'll just bring this into and just show you what I actually use. About the only thing I use in color effects, which is this Pro Contrast. And I
have to admit, I use that a lot as well.
And what I use this, it's good for correcting color casts to a degree, only subtly usually. But the dynamic contrast is what is a really great tool. And you'll see what it does here. And I'm probably not going to use it for this image because it's doing what I don't want it to do, but it does bring out a lot more contrast into the midtones. But it's sort of losing that. Look, I'll use it just a touch, just to bring out a little bit on the edges. I usually have a fiddle with the color correction, see what happens with that. And that's just sort of magentaing it out a bit. I'm not, see, I don't, not a big fan of all that, but I might just correct it a tiny bit. And I'll just save that just for fun. And then I'll go into Photoshop. So, have I selected the right one? Is it the right one? Yeah.
I think you've got about 5 minutes, Nick, just so you know.
Got about that much left. Okay. Yep. So this is my Photoshop, which isn't. Oh, yeah. This is my Photoshop, which is a bit different to the way Luke set it up, but I've still got the Tony Kuiper combination. Is yours number 8? Is it?
Yeah, it's the latest one. It's changed quite a bit. The other reason I set mine up on the left, mainly because I hate going from that to then the other side all the time. So I just try to put everything in the same place for efficiency.
So what I do here is I'll quite often attack the midtones. So here I can select the midtones. It brings it up like that. And then I just create a curves layer.
Yeah.
And this is something I'll do with a lot of shots. I'll just basically chuck a bit of contrast in there if we.
So they've done away with the piano keys in the new one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Another thing I'll do is I'll use the color selections. So if I want to just target the greens or the cool tones or whatever, I can target them in here. And it's something I do quite often. So if I pick green, yellow, which is most of the image, we'll see what happens. Oh, hang on, I was on the wrong thing there. Yeah. So then, if you want to just sort of enhance the greens, or you can create a saturation mask for those particular colours, and then just, you can see that you're just attacking that, which I might actually do just a bit, although it's sort of giving us a bit of light on the edges. A bit too much in that fern, so I'll just select that. 50%. Just reduce that effect in there a bit. Put it down to 20%. Just reduce it a bit more. So what I might look at now is this on the edge here. Maybe. I don't know if I want any more detail in the left-hand myrtle or not. And I don't know if I want a vignette, but I can try, I suppose. So I might just do it the lazy way and just add a vignette via, oh no, I'll do a freehand vignette. So I've done it again. I've got this mouse button that I keep pressing and it stuffs everything. Just do that there, freehand vignette.
Probably better anyway, isn't it?
So it's just created a vignette there. So it's obviously horrible. So just bring it out. So I will leave that for now. So
Imagine how much that directs the eye to the softer light in the back. There's been a few questions or comments around the middle, the white stick that's sort of in the middle there, under the middle tree. Would that be something you would look at working with, or just leave it? Or
no, I don't clone stuff out like that.
Yeah.
I know there's lots of opportunity to get rid of distractions and all sorts of things like that, but that's not how I work at all. I will, if there's an obvious stick on the ground that's a dead stick that is in the composition that's going to be a pain, then I'll look at moving it physically. If I haven't done that by the time I've taken the image and got home, then I'll generally leave it in, because otherwise I just feel, well, it can rule you out of competitions, for example. Like if I wanted to put this in a competition in 2 years' time and I've done some cloning like that and I've forgotten about it, I might not even pick it up before I enter it. I don't want to be in that position. And not that I enter lots of competitions, but I do enter the AusGeo one, for example. I wouldn't want to rule myself out on a technicality.
And this would be botanical, so that's your category. So
yeah. So I'm just bringing up a little bit of the.
Probably have to wrap the edit up too, Nick, just so you know.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly. Oh, hang on, 20%. So, I might paint in a little bit of light in there because I've got that vignette sort of thing there, maybe a little bit down here. And look, sometimes I'd look at these ridges that we have with the light on them, and I might look at just sort of enhancing the light on the edges a little bit, just bringing out a bit more, on this little section here on the edge of the myrtle. I might slightly make it a bit lighter. I haven't got time for this, and often I don't bother. But look, that's not bad. What I do is I do what Luke does for web sharpening. And so I've got these up here. I just use 1000 pix and 1200. Just click horizontal. It does that, and that's ready to save and put on Instagram or whatever. But I save everything. I don't do the sharpening until I print. For if I'm using the big ones, I leave them all unsharpened until I've got something else to do with it. So I have a master TIFF file, and then I'll work off that if I want to print it or someone wants it for a particular project or something and they're going to pay me for it, then I'll look at doing something with it then in terms of sharpening. But I don't sharpen until that point. But when I do sharpen, I'll just show you quickly. I'll get rid of that.
This is a good tip, this one.
I use Nick Sharpener, which I've used for years. Sharpener Pro Output Sharpener. I'll just show you what I do. Of course, it's
probably all different.
It probably look completely different. No, it's pretty good. Here at the output, if I'm going to do for a print, obviously I resize it to the size that I want for the print first. Then I look at the inkjet, and then I look at the printer resolution, which I know for Epson is 2880 by 1440. Leave it at textured and fine art, but you can select canvas, matte, luster, glossy, etc. but I just use it on that because I use cotton rag. And then the viewing distance is the thing that if you're going to do it a fairly big print that's going to be viewed from a distance, then you might look at saying doing it from a 1.2 to 2.5 meter viewing distance. And what that will do is give a more aggressive sharpening, which means if you look at it really closely, it might look over sharpened close up. But if there's a specific place that you're going to hang it and people aren't going to look at it closely, then you might go for that longer viewing distance. I usually select the 60 to 150 centimeters, unless I think people are really going to pixel peep. And
depends if there's going to be photographers looking, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if you look down in the bottom corner, it's probably no good on Zoom anyway, but you can see the difference that it makes on the red line. And then I'll adjust the output sharpening strength to what I think will be appropriate, and it works really, really well. I've never had any issues with it, and you just as long as you get the printer resolution correctly and you set the right things there, then you'll be right to go. But anyway, we'll get off that one.
I'll do the same on Nick's recommendation, and I love it. So
yeah,
a few other guys that use that one as well. So it's good.
All right,
very good.
so click out of that, save changes. All right, I'll save the changes. I'll probably ditch it and go back. Yeah, but
one of those things, isn't it? When you edit live, it's probably you don't end up doing exactly what you'd do if you didn't have 50 people watching you. So it's
like you, I fart around a lot, and I'll go yes, and then I'll go no, and then I'll undo, and then I'll do.
It doesn't make for riveting watching, does it? When you like that, maybe I'll move it like 0.5 this way.
Yeah, and that's the anal that you get into, and I'm sure that everybody is very similar, that you start getting very anally retentive about things. So anyway, I'll stop sharing screen.
Yep. And, no worries.
Hang on,
I've done that for you.
So you already have.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep things moving along, and I will go to this time. Nick gets his own personal choice here, because I've got a lot more. You feel free to try and sway Nick's choice if you wanted to provide any feedback to Nick, if that's your thing. But this is the full selection I had, and I'll have to take out the unrated. I'll just share screen first. That's the one there. All right, so I have got, I'm going to have to just choose. How do I go unrated? There we go. So that's just going to take out the ones that was the last selection.
Can I select from those as well?
Oh, yeah, you can. This is all right. We'll just go back to showing everything then. What do? I just turn that off, and everything should be there. Yeah, excellent. All right.
Yeah. Right.
Now I'll try and minimize that so you can see everything. I'll take this out as well. There we go. So we got 14 there.
Gee, I'm liking 13.
13, yeah.
Because it's different. Right. It's different. It's
yeah.
completely different. But having said that, I really like 10 as well.
Yeah.
Because it's got some serious stuff that you could do with it. But I'm not sure it's the sort of one that you'd be happy finishing in 20 minutes.
Well, I mean, that's where I just have to work my magic, really. So
yeah, look, I think I'll go. I think we'll go. No, let's go 10. Come on.
Yeah. All right. We'll have a quick.
It's got some beautiful light there, and
yeah, and I mean, it's probably worth actually going to the original folder with this one, because I don't know why. Oh, because I need to go to I'll go to the grid for that. So that I did quite a lot of different stuff just playing around, but I did a few panos as well, where I've actually taken closer in frames, and then with the thought of merging them later as well. But I guess I picked that particular shot because it sort of had all the information in one space, which is this one here. But you can see the light was casting a few other little patterns here and there at the same time. But yeah, it was one of those days where it didn't feel like the weather wasn't really that great, but all you need is the sun to come through at the right time in the right place, and all of a sudden everything's just not too bad. Actually, this one there's pretty nice as well.
Yeah.
Would you
I've
prefer that one
talked
there?
about that before, Luke, in the southwest. It's a perfect time to go down when the weather's bad, because you get these moments of change that just, they're fleeting, and you know, it's a real privilege to be there and see it, and to capture it on the camera is fantastic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll go with that one there. So it's actually kind of different to an image that I would normally work with, because normally I'm doing all of the big, pretty postcardy sort of stuff. But part of me sort of feels like I don't want to do too much to it because it's already in a pretty good state. I might just have a look at a few of the different. I guess I can go in here into the browser too and just check out all of the other profiles and just see if there's one that, like, neutral looks pretty cool there, just taking a bit of those blues out. Deep clears pretty dramatic there, but it's made the mountains in the back pretty black. Light portrait, I mean, vivid's pretty nice there. Might go with vivid. Depends on how much you like the blues, I suppose, what it's really coming down to. I think I'm liking the blue. That's sort of taken a lot of the blue out, and the blue seems to add a lot more drama to me. So I'm going to probably go with vivid on that one, which isn't a choice I'd normally make, but that's why you've got the browser there just to look through all of the different choices. I don't normally go with a 16:9 crop, but I'm just finding that there's so much extra cloud up the top here that to me is a bit distracting, but it might be working for it without me knowing. So I'll just see, because sometimes I find it really hard to work on an image if there's an extra part to the image that I'm not really that interested in. So I think, what do you reckon, Nick? Is that worth cropping the top off? I mean, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
I think it just really cleans it up a little bit. I wouldn't. So 16:9 is obviously really good for a wallpaper or something like that. It is a aspect ratio I use every now and then, but yeah, it's I normally like to use 2:3. The other option, of course, I would have here is just to crop it just in at 2:3, but then I'm going to lose the sides, and I think it just has a bit more of a panoramic feel when you're at 16:9. So that's what I'll just do that for the purposes of this edit, and I'd work out what I was going to do later. Okay. I'm inclined to, I think the blacks are dark, but there's probably just not enough separation perhaps between, I don't know if it shows up in YouTube or not, but or Zoom, but there's actually different layers going on here. So I might just reduce the contrast slightly, just to try and maybe up the shadows just slightly, just to try and get a bit more separation in with those elements in the back there. I'll adjust, obviously it makes the edges look terrible, which I'll work on later, but I'm just trying to get a little bit more separation between the color tones in there. I haven't looked at all of the other opportunities here for color balance as well, or just adjust it manually. So I will do that, because this is the sort of image where the color balance can make a real dramatic difference. I was pretty happy with where it was, to be honest. That's 5860 daylights there. Maybe, yeah, just slightly warm it, just to, yeah, that's made it look a little bit more like sunlight. So I like, actually, I'll split the difference with that. I think I'll go 5850. Sometimes I find the adjustment is so subtle just to get the right color tone. So I'll just put a little bit more exposure in there, just to open that up a bit. Vibrance, what's that looking like? That's going to give us a bit more of the blue coming through. What else have I got here? Dehaze. That's actually not doing a too bad job of just I think dehaze tends to make things a little bit bluer anyway, so that's also punching in some of that extra color. I wouldn't normally use much of it, but that's not a bad option. I like the idea of trying to push these light patches a bit. You can see in here that there's actually it's very flat in that respect. So if I push up the highlights a little bit, that should actually boost that to a certain degree and give a bit more separation. So I'm just basically increasing the contrast of the image, reducing the exposure, go down to tonal contrast, and you don't want to push those lights too far, but at the same time, it's nice to have them there. Yeah, this is one where I think it's all about finesse and all about trying to find the best outcome, where you're not like crunching everything. What I'm doing here is actually adding I think I've done it the wrong way. I'm adding the vignette back in, or the darkening. And I think this is probably the adjustment that'll have the most impact to the image. So I'm just going to, I did like the fact that it was lighter. I'll just still reduce the exposure and reduce the contrast, which is something I like to do. I might actually still keep some highlights up in there and whites. And I'll turn that off and on just to see the difference. I'll set that to auto on edit pins so that doesn't get in the way when I do that. Yeah, so it's made quite a dramatic difference. I don't like the fact, I mean, it needs to be a bit darker in that part there. So I might reduce that as well. And those, yeah, it's actually one where maybe if I put that there, it's not so bad. Yeah, just trying to work out, like, I don't want it to look too obvious that there's a vignette being added either. So something like that's not too bad. I also will play with the tone curve, which I think will have a pretty big effect on this image. Certainly pushing this lights up is really pushing the highlights in the back there. If I set that flag on, you should see that starting to blow out. Yeah, so it's getting close to, it's definitely got a lot more whites in that than there was before. This is going to soften it a bit too, adding a bit of darks in there, sort of just making it a little bit more, reducing the contrast a little bit by doing this, just so that it's not so crunchy, because it still needs a little bit of softness to it. Brutal beauty is what they often call it in Tassie. That's certainly apt for this particular picture. Yeah, all right, I'll pull it across into Photoshop and do a few extra things in there. I don't like the top here yet. That doesn't feel right for me, so I'll work on that. And there's something, I think that's just part of the escarpment there, but there's definitely a distracting element there. I'm a bit like Nick, I tend not to remove things, but that one is particularly distracting. So I might look at doing something like that. I sort of approach it a little differently to Nick, in the sense that if I am going to use an image for a competition, I'll go back and review all the layers, because I don't flatten everything that I edit. And then I'll see if any of the layers involve cloning, and then I'll just remove those layers for the competition. But that's a lot more time consuming than knowing automatically that everything's good to go. So that's why I've struggled to enter competitions a lot of the time, because it's just, it's very time consuming. So I think Nick's way wins, in my opinion. And it's actually, just seeing that makes me think that it would look pretty amazing in black and white, actually.
It definitely would, but
it might even be a better option. Now, to do that, you could probably look at putting, just having a bit of an experiment with silver effects. So let's do that because that did look pretty cool. I used to do a lot of black and white, and I don't really do much anymore. So let's have a look and see what we can do with this one.
Yeah. So the new Silver FX is tons better than this old.
Oh yeah, I actually was trying to install that today, but I need to get all of the things set up properly for it. So I thought it would be better to do that when I have a bit more time and actually try it out for myself.
Oh, it's amazing.
I'm just wondering if the window has popped up, but I can't see it. Looks like it hasn't. That's Lightroom there. Don't know what's going on. Oh, there we go. All right, it's just my slow computer. All right, so it's just loading it in. Shouldn't really be that slow. It's a pretty new machine, so that's good fun. Contrast, yes, that's contrast is really doing it there. This is really, to be honest, because I'm a bit out of touch with the black and white editing. This would be a situation, and Nick might be the same, where you just move the sliders until it looks good, basically, to your eye, and it's still a very sort of explorative way of editing. But
there's a real art in black and white, and
yeah,
and getting it right is, yes, very difficult. Well, what is right? I mean, but,
well, it's what's right for you, I suppose, isn't it? And that's really the challenge. Is I mean, this is honestly something that I could do for a long period of time. Actually, the blue filter there is good because that's going to help the separation. One thing that I'd like to be able to do in this image is actually see that there's different layers here. And if you use something like this red filter, all of these layers just merge into each other. So that's definitely something that I'd like to try and achieve with the edit, and get this bit a lot darker than this bit, for example, which is, yeah, it involves a lot of subtle editing. And the other complication is I don't know how this is actually looking on the screens at home too. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on it because, the reality is that I'd be adjusting that for ages. So I'll just apply that.
Yep.
Another thing you can actually do is then blend the black and white into the color image as well, which I've done very sparingly, but I have done in the past. So that's worth having a look as well. And that just sort of helps to provide a bit more interest, just having that little touch of blue perhaps in there. So let's see what that does. Just pulling that back in there. Yeah, it's kind of cool because then you've got the color helping to separate the layers there as well. Whereas otherwise you're just relying on the tones that were there. So that's yeah, that's something that I probably am liking it with the blues still, but I do like it darker in the back. So why don't I just apply that to just do that selectively. So to do that, I would create a mask, and then I'll just freehand paint out actually I want to do it the other way. I want to make the middle bluer, so I'll paint it in like that. I don't know if that looks good or it looks terrible, but this is all part of the exploring process. Probably looks terrible. Yeah, always turning the layers off and on to see what works. I definitely prefer that look there. Don't like that. So yeah, there's definitely a problem there with that mask. Something like that. And then, am I going for time, Nick? I don't want to hold you up.
I forgot to start the timer.
Oh, I think I was
going
to go to about 9:50 or sorry, 8:50 or around that sort of time.
Yeah, that'd be about right, mate.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's probably one of those ones where you know, it's not a great example of technical prowess, more around finesse on this particular image, because you know, I was already relatively happy with it as when it started. I mean, it looked like this initially. You know, it's debatable whether it really had far to go to start with. So, and whether that's an improvement, I don't know. Probably not. But hopefully, there was you guys learned a little bit, or took away some different approaches there. A bit rainy look to the image. Yeah, I don't know. Certainly not for me. There's a bit of there was a bit of sort of there's just a question on Zoom about the image having a rainy look, or I think it does look like there's a bit of kind of virga coming down from the clouds a little bit, but that's just the sort of wispy nature of the clouds. But there wasn't any rain as such coming down at the time. Yeah. Cool.
Right. Go with mine then. Next one.
Yes, bring up your selection.
That's a pretty cool image anyway. I like that. It's just,
yeah.
But you're right. It's the sort of one that you'll be sliding things back and forth all day, and always wondering if it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
They're not actually my favorite images to edit, to be honest, when they're like that. I much prefer I don't know, the technical aspect of doing a merge of exposures or something like that. But we'll have to do another session like this down the track, and certainly get Paul involved as well. I know that he'd love to do it as well. So bring up yours.
Well, what have I got there? Oh, I've got Photoshop now. You see?
All right.
You got that there?
Yep. Oh yeah, there's all sorts going on there. All right.
Yeah, cool. So I removed the one that we've already done, and
yeah. So you've got Chasm Falls there. You've got a beautiful forest scene on the right there at number 5. You've got some beautiful light in 7. What is number 4? Is that Flinders Egg Beach or something?
No, it's Trial Harbour.
Oh, right. Interesting. Okay. And then 1 looks like Sarah Ann, or around that sort of area, and on the Tscharke coast.
And 2 is Mount William.
Okay. Yep. Beautiful.
Right up near Stumpy's, actually.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Look, I'm really looking towards number 5. For me, your when I think of your work, I always think of those beautiful forest scenes. I know, but I do know we also just had an edit of that sort of thing.
It's probably going to be the same.
Yeah, it would be the same sort of minute little feathery things that you do. The Chasm Falls shot's pretty nice. And I'd be keen. Anthony saying number 7. Oh yeah, let's see number 7. You're really good with those sort of foggy scenes as well. Well, yeah, I'm keen to see what you do with that.
They nearly picked it before, so I think that's a good choice, Luke. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Oh, excellent.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Anthony.
Put me out of my misery.
Yeah, no, this is one that I've sort of been. I've looked at a couple of times and then looked away, and then it's going to be an interesting one. So this is just, I was literally driving up to the northeast, I think, and it was foggy on the way up, and this was at Melton Mowbray, which is just north of Kempton, probably 50 or 60 kilometres north of Hobart. And it just was a matter of stopping the car, going off the highway down towards the lakes, and stopping the car and taking some shots with a long lens. So it shot 240 mil. And you didn't really have, with the framing choice, this is always going to be a crop, because you can see there's some dramas in the side here. So we've got like up here and on the left side here, and then down the bottom I've got a little bit of an incursion, and here, and then we've got the sky, and I don't know that I want the sky, so I'll have to get the crop tool out and try and find something that works. I might try 4.5.
Oh, trusty.
Different. If we get rid of the sky, let's just get rid of the sky for now. No. So the other issue I got this bit of twig off the side here, but I don't think that really matters. And then I've obviously got this bit up here, but and I don't like that.
You ever do square?
Sometimes, but not very often. And I just have to get rid of that tiny stick incursion. Can I bring it out a bit? Oh, and also we've got this little subtle thing down here. Let's try that.
Harder to see on Zoom.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What I'll do first is like really increase the contrast to show you what's actually in the image. Just so if we get the,
oh wow, jeez.
So if we get the
holy smokes.
Yeah, so you can just see down this bottom corner here, there's this cool bit of light on this thing. Looks like we've got some spider webs. Yeah, there's just some nice subtle bits and pieces in there. So this is about getting the contrast right. I think I've done all I can really on the edges. I might adjust the crop very, very slightly here and there. I can't avoid this stick here. The rest is all looking okay. Yeah, so the first thing I'll do is I'll bring the blacks down a touch. And again, you don't want to lose that, that atmosphere, but you really want to make use of these light beams. I'll just increase the whites a bit. Bring the black down a bit. It's a good place to start. That's also brought these bits in the side here that I wasn't expecting because I couldn't see those before. So it's a little bit distracting, but now I've said that, everyone will look at them and at the end of the image. No, I might have to do something to hide those, but I don't know if I've got enough time to fiddle with that. Now,
would you ever just like get a spot healing tool and just do it that way, just to knock it out, or that's too crude?
Well, I could. I mean, it's too much cloning for competition if you're going to use it.
Yeah, it's true.
So again, it's probably a case more of lightening those.
Oh, yeah.
And doing it via, changing the brightness or luminosity of things to bring them down. So yes, you can get away with that sort of thing for. So you're not cloning something out. You might just subtly change the brightness or the color to bring it out. So or to not to bring it out, to hide it away, and that's probably the way to get around that sort of thing. So I reckon temperature-wise, well, we could make it nuclear warm, couldn't we? We don't want to go cool because it doesn't look right. You don't have warm light or light beams and it's cool, but we don't want it to be too warm. So, oh yeah, magenta. Woo, yeah, look at that. Okay, remember the best processing tip I can give you, kids, is just put the magenta slider all the way to the right.
What a banger.
Yeah. I think the term banger and magenta go together, don't they? The other thing, we've got the dehaze slider here, and this will make a massive difference in this image, not necessarily for the good. So let's slide it along and see what happens. Yeah, right. So what you're doing there is you're really bringing up the detail, but you're getting a lot more distractions, and also obviously I'd be getting rid of lens, dust spots, which are quite prominent in some spots. So I definitely don't want to bring in that level of dehaze. And if you go the other way,
that could be a good way of masking those bits on the side.
Well, yeah, you could do it that way. But anyway, I think this is nearly Lightroom over. I tend to do a fair bit of work in. I grew up with Photoshop before Lightroom was around, so I tend to take things over there reasonably quickly.
You have a percentage, like you'd do like 25% Lightroom, 75 Photoshop, or like?
Look, time-wise, yeah, I'd say it'd be a quarter time spent in Lightroom for the edit and 3/4 in Photoshop. But that's only really because in Photoshop I'm doing all sorts of little subtle things that don't necessarily that take a bit of time. And Lightroom, I tend to do a bit more global stuff. But I mean, you can do all sorts of things. Sometimes I'll just do most of it in Lightroom, but it really depends on the image. And this one needs, well, it doesn't need a lot. It looks pretty reasonable as it is, but we'll take it into Photoshop. I mean, you can go silly with an image like this and overdo it, and sometimes the trick is not to overdo it. So, yeah, I mean, we haven't. If we look at our histogram, which you can't see much of, it's up the top. We haven't got too much in the way of lights. I might just let me just do the trick of the midtones, which is probably most of the image, but we'll do a mid-tone luminosity mask using the Tony Kuiper thing, do a curves layer, and I reckon bring down that. Yeah, I think that's good. So, yeah, definitely need a bit more darkness in there. So we'll leave that as it is. We really need a bit more contrast with the light beams, but this is where it gets difficult and could cause you some issues. So I might do a, see, I've used it, that'll do. So it's a lights 3, which is pretty, that's given us some interesting stuff. So obviously it's the white is what you're going to be working on if you export it to a curves layer, and the black is what's not going to be touched. So the greys are sort of semi-touched by what you do. So we'll bring the curves layer again, and then just increase the lights a bit, but make it a fairly aggressive curves. It's not really doing a lot there. Let me just have a look. Well, it's sort of increased the light source a bit up the top left, which, well, that's where the light's coming from. We have to expect the top left's going to be the brightest part of the image. How bright we make that's probably, you're looking at whether it's distracting or not, really. So, yeah. Might just do a general curves layer. Just bend it a bit more, just a tiny bit. Yeah, so you're starting to get to the point now where you might look at locally doing individual light beams and trying to separate stuff, but you can overdo it. So I don't want to overdo it. What about the color? I like the color. I don't think it needs too much more saturation or anything like that. It's fairly subtle. I certainly have to work on the the dust bunnies and stuff like that, which I'm not going to bother doing here, but there's a few. This would obviously work great in black and white as well, with more contrast. So you would, because it's color, it's probably a bit less contrast. Black and white, you'd probably do a bit more contrast. So the bush down the bottom would be darker. You'd probably darken the limbs on the tree a bit more with contrast and let the light really play with it. But for this, I'm fairly happy with that. It might need a bit more of a light boost. Let me do another curves layer. Oh, yeah, did the wrong thing again. And this is, yeah, just all about balancing what's too much and what's too little. I think now I've got good light beams, but too much in the top there. So I might just grab a brush, black. And this is where I'd big brush, low opacity, so down to 10%, and just sort of brush that away a bit.
Is this an image you'd be inclined to go black and white, or you'd like the gold color, so you'd definitely go with a color version, or you'd still play around with the black and white?
Yeah, no. I'd probably play around with the black and white, but I really think I would, because I really like the tones in this image. They're quite beautiful. So I think I would leave it at that. So look, there's more work to be done about brightness levels here. It's not the sort of image you'd put a vignette in, because you've got light coming directly across the scene. But yeah, it may need a bit more contrast work. I definitely have to do something about this little branch here. It is distracting. I wouldn't claim it out. I'd just work on some way of lightening that. I'm not going to do that now. But yeah, I really like this little bush here and how it's been caught there. It's really nice.
It's all about the crop, really. I mean, if you think about where you started from,
which
I don't think a lot of people would have expected it to end up looking like that.
Yeah, so if we go back to where we started from, which isn't that, I'll just make a virtual copy. Create virtual copy.
Backslash it.
Yeah, backslash goes back to original as well. Sometimes, yeah.
Very good. I don't know all the shortcuts and stuff. So that's the original. Obviously very, very flat with the light. It was warmer than that in real life, but I've certainly made it warmer in Photoshop. And yeah, I think the crop works okay. Yes, we do have a couple of branches going out, but look, you can't, nature's not perfect. You've got to work with what you can. You just don't want to highlight where there's issues. And bringing up the contrast did highlight this little distraction down here, which I'll probably fix at some stage if I can be bothered. And but obviously with the crop, we got rid of this bush over here, this little incursion down here, this one over here. So yeah, and that was my intention at the time. I couldn't adjust where we were. If I zoomed in too close with the lens that I had, I would have actually limited my options in crop. So the idea was to give myself a bit of wiggle room, because this was high up on a hill and I was down low, so I didn't really have a lot of compositional choice where I could move around, and the light was changing very quickly as well. So just shooting a little bit wider than you'd want I was able to then use that crop, and even then it was a bit of a finesse thing. If we so you can see I really did have to place it carefully to get it right. And sometimes you'll take an image like this and it doesn't matter what you do, you can't get the crop right. There's something that'll just bugger it every time, no matter what you do. But this one works all right like that. And the advantage of a high resolution image is there. So yeah, beautiful. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, thanks heaps, Nick. That was awesome.
Any more questions on that, or
Yeah, I think just some people agreeing on the color tones you've picked. David mentioned that. David also made a really good comment that you can actually use the range mask tool in Lightroom if you're not comfortable using something like the luminosity masking panels in Photoshop. So that's definitely worth exploring. It's something that I didn't have a chance to show on the edits that I did, but definitely a really good choice. And you can apply that selectively using the brush tool or the radial filter tool, or a few of those other, and the grad filter as well. So I've even seen people apply the grad to the whole image and then use the range mask on the whole image, just to like a global adjustment for a particular luminosity value. So
yeah, it's pretty good actually. I've started using it a couple of years ago because I didn't really know much about it, and had to fiddle with it, and it seems to work pretty well. And yeah, it's a great alternative if you're not sort of too Photoshoppy, which I guess this day and age people didn't people don't have to learn Photoshop like we sort of did back in the early 2000s because there was no other choice.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to do more and more of my editing in Photoshop, in Lightroom these days. And I think I've gone from probably your ratio of 25/75 to probably, I'd say it'd be 80/20 or something like that.
Yep.
Nowadays. So, and that's good. That's a lot good for speed, but also it's just nice to be able to have it all squared away in the Lightroom catalog the way it is. So, yeah, that's great. Well, I hope you enjoyed our first choose our live edit session. Feel free to send us feedback about how it went and what if you'd like to see a different format. It's probably something that we'll do more in the future, especially if we can't find guests last minute, which is always a challenge sometimes. But we do have a few excellent guests lined up on the show coming up. I'm not quite sure, unfortunately, based on our schedules. I know Paul's away now for quite a period of time. He's cruising all around the country. I think he's going up in WA, up to Tanami and up all the way up to around Cairns or something like that. So he's got quite a big trip that he's doing. So I don't know. I think he'll try and dial in when he can. So I guess that's the nature of being a landscape photographer as you travel. And I'm actually going to be traveling too. I'm going to be on the road from Sunday, and I'll probably only be getting back 10 days later. So it's very hard to do these shows remotely, unfortunately, and where we can, we'll also try and do some pre-records so we can at least show some something that people we've spoken to earlier. But yeah, thanks for bearing with us during that, and probably slow down a bit after the financial year's ended and people trying to spend their budgets and that sort of stuff. So so that'll be good. All right. Well, have you got anything to add, Nick?
No, just on that, all three of us have got things on, I suppose, and now that COVID sort of drifted away, we can open up our travel and stuff like that. So, but we definitely want to keep the show going, and we will. Yeah, but just some weeks it'll just be not possible, and we'll have to give it a rest for the week. But most weeks we'll try something and keep it going because we're having a lot of fun, and I know you guys are too, which is fantastic. But yes, it'll be different depending on what weeks, and sometimes we organise things really early for next week's show, and sometimes we find that we've run out of time. We haven't organised very much at all. Yeah, just bear with us as we as we bring these shows together because yeah, it depends a lot on our availability now. Yeah, keen to keep going.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, no, we love doing them. And yeah, if you've got any good suggestions for guests to have on, or the other people that are keen, please let us know as well. Feel free to get in contact. If you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to either, if you enjoy what you see, then please subscribe, and also feel free to give the video a like as well. It helps with the algorithm and that kind of thing as well. Yeah, look, thanks again for joining us. We'll send, if you want updates on what's happening with the show, do join our mailing list. It's probably the best way. We do send out an email before every show, almost, but mostly. And even if we're not having one, we normally let people know that there's not going to be a show during the week. So if you go to our Facebook page, Talking Landscape Photography on Facebook, there's a link to subscribe to the mailing list on there. That's probably the best way to keep in touch. And we also do post what's coming up on the Facebook page as well as on Instagram as well. So yeah, follow us on those channels and you'll have better updates on all of those sort of things. Look, yeah, thanks once again. Have a great rest of the evening.